Turing was in here yesterday, and he's wearing a bow tie now. And I told him
The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
welcome from the General Assembly and the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications. And a very warm welcome to a couple of members from Fairfax County, one from the Senate and one from the House of Delegates. Senator Dave Marsden, good to see you, sir.
Good to be here, Woody.
Delegate Vivian Watts, great to have you back again.
Always great to be with you, Woody.
Well, I know one of your areas of expertise is transportation. You were Secretary of Transportation at one time for the Commonwealth of Virginia. But I wanted to start off by reading from a study and an analysis you made last year, which I know you're updating now, but it has just some startling facts. For example, the D.C. region is now the most congested in the nation. Commuters spend 74 extra hours annually tied up in traffic, spending an average of $1,500 in time and fuel. The Northern Virginia rush hour is 7 hours. Moving to Hampton Roads. The Hampton Roads rush hour is 4 hours and costs its economy $500 million. The Richmond rush hour is 2.5 hours and costs its economy $202 million. Now, we have a number of transportation proposals before the General Assembly. Sounds like Groundhog Day to me. This has been going on for quite a bit of time, but tell us what's going on, where you are on all these issues, especially the governor's proposal.
Let me start, Woody, with your lead-in, which was excellent as far as what we need to keep a focus on. One of the reasons that you're seeing some more intense attention this session compared to the groundhog again and again and again, because we have needed to address this for more than a decade. But one of the reasons that you're seeing attention this session is that for the first time in a number of years, Virginia has dropped from being #1 place to do business in the nation. And we lost that position as the best place to do business, not for any other reason than transportation. We dropped from 10th in the nation to 33rd in the nation. And that drop was not because of potholes in Lynchburg, but it was because of the congestion in the urban crescent. And that is my biggest concern, as I have spent many a late night hour trying to get my a firm understanding of the dollars behind each proposal. And that's my greatest concern about the governor's proposal. He addresses only maintenance. He only has $12 million in the first full year of funding, 2018. He only has $12 million for construction. And again, we didn't lose our standing as the best place to do business. And that is something that ripples through every corporate decision to bring jobs to Virginia. Because of potholes, we lost it because of what we've got to do in transportation structure for congestion.
And Senator Marsden, you are seeing these same impacts in the district you represent.
No question, Woody. It is a crisis, and you know we've run out the state credit card. There's no more borrowing we can do for transportation. That's how the governor took care of things for the last 2 years. That's coming to an end. I have concerns about his bill. Although I will say I appreciate the fact that Governor McDonald has put new revenue on the table. He has, I guess, incurred the wrath of Grover Norquist and Americans for Tax Reform. He's said that that's not going to deter him. However, as Vivian just stated, the amount of money in there only takes care of maintenance really and doesn't address our larger concerns. So if you're going to do this, let's get it done. And let's get an amount of money in there that works. Now here's the several problems I have with his bill. One, when you take away the gas tax, it allows people to use from all over the country who drive through Virginia to use our roads for free, essentially. And when the 17.5 cents disappears from the pump because of the reduction in taxes, don't think it's going to show up on the pump price. We may only see about a 4 or 5 cent reduction, and I think people are going to be very angry thinking they're going to get the full 17.5 cents.
And that's evidenced by the fact that if you go to the North Carolina border today, there's very little difference at the pump.
Viewers at home, go to gasbuddy.com, and the gasoline tax in North Carolina is 20 cents higher. I've never seen the statewide average higher than 10. Usually it's 4 or 5 cents. GasBuddy.com, go look at it yourself. What works in terms of increasing gas taxes will also work in reducing gas taxes. Gas companies have far more complex pricing structures than what states decide to do about taxes, and so you're going to see an 0.8% increase in the sales tax, which is going to cost all Virginians. And basically, this whole plan is predicated on Virginians paying for everything. And the last and biggest concern I have is the fact that the internet sales tax that the governor is counting on, the federal government has yet to pass that, and in 5 years, 40-some% of what will be new money for roads will be existing general funds, and that's unacceptable to put that much of our general fund money into transportation, and it's a real problem.
Delegate Watts, has anybody seen the governor's proposal in the form of a bill?
Woody, as of 9 days into a 45-day session, the bill still hasn't been introduced. And my deepest concern about that is, while, again, I attended his press conference, I think I was probably the only legislator in the audience, but it was the best decision I could have made, was because I went away with the handouts of that day. But that's been 2 weeks ago, and that's all I have in my hands. So I was able to use his number to document some of the things that Senator Marsden was just talking about, as far as of his again, 5 years out, $850 million. Well, about $300 million of that comes from the general fund. $250 million comes from congressional action on the internet taxing, so that you're left with basically no there, even at best. But I want to also, not only did we hear from Grover Norquist about a tax is a tax is a tax, and you cannot make this excuse, but just on the 16th, the following is from a Wall Street Journal editorial. So you've got several definitions of conservatism, and I would say the Wall Street opinion page represents a strong voice of conservatism. And reading just a couple of sentences, the gas tax for sales tax swap violates the user pays principle of sound tax policy. Goes on to say, even worse is Mr. McDonald's scheme to tax internet sales in Virginia, pending federal law to allow it, and use the estimated $1 billion windfall for roads and mass transit. If Republicans really want to tax internet sales, they should at least combine base broadening with a lower sales tax rate. The McDonald plan would raise the rate and broaden the base, which is President Obama's idea of quote-unquote tax reform. So you have a really strongly worded, lengthy editorial from the Wall Street Journal. Again, it is not sound tax policy, and it really hurts us to have this kind of nationalist questioning of Virginia's management of such a basic need as funding our infrastructure.
Now, Senator Marsden, the projects that are ongoing, the new construction, for example, the hot lanes, how has that been funded?
Well, that's been funded through a joint effort of the Commonwealth of Virginia and Transurban Floor Lane Company. And I think they put up $1 billion. We put up $400 million. I think that's the correct number. Maybe it's a little
Well, it
higher.
depends upon how you look at the financing. It's not quite that balanced, but we'll just stay with that for the sake of discussion.
It is, but they put money in. We put money in. And it's going to be congestion pricing. Whenever you get on, if the hot lanes are being heavily used, or express lanes, I'm sorry, that's the proper term for them, then the price, goes up, which means that more people are using it because the general lanes are crowded. Now, I go from Burke, Virginia to Bethesda, Maryland on the Beltway, and I've noticed a big difference. Since these express lanes have been open, the general lanes are running more freely. And the interesting thing is that I think it is very difficult to get out of Tyson's Corners and onto the Beltway. Once you get on the Beltway, it moves pretty quickly, but the express lanes give you an express way out of Tyson's Corner, and people are willing to pay for the privilege of just skipping the access ramp back up from Route 7 onto the Beltway. So it's kind of interesting, but so far so good.
However, I have 30% of that project cut right through my district, so I lived through the serious problems of construction. So I've always had a love-hate relationship with the project, which speaks to some of these same public-private partnerships elsewhere in the state, that if you don't have adequate public money in the partnership, then you don't have the ability to address other concerns that you need to be addressing besides just the revenue-producing express lanes, which, by the way, it's a 70-year contract and there's no control on the tolls. It's totally the congestion pricing under this 70-year contract. The good thing about it is express buses and van pools, carpools free, so it's a good transit corridor coming all the way up from the south, giving access to a major employment center. But without the adequate public money, then a number of these congestion spots leading up to these express lanes, whether it's Tyson's Corner, as Dave has just referred to, or whether it's significant cut-through traffic in my neighborhoods, or whether it was an approach to a merge in an exit lane coming off it that was not addressed, that still has incredible sight distance problems, but there was no public money to be addressing this as a complete unified project. So there's been a number of problems that have been created that are all part of this minimum $1 billion a year need we have for new revenue for transportation infrastructure, besides addressing a $500 million maintenance deficit.
So that public, that public money is still a critical need, but as you point out, you can't use the credit card any longer.
And we're pretty much done. Right now, we're paying for maintenance in Virginia by taking money from the construction fund. And by 2017, I believe, is the date that they've given right now, we will no longer have a qualifying match for our federal highway dollars. So what Governor McDonnell is getting started today is critical. He is right. The time is now. We can't wait. We have to do something. Unfortunately, what we're doing right now is not going to get us very far.
And Delegate Watts, I believe you have a bill that is a counterweight to what the governor has proposed.
I've been carrying a comprehensive bill for the last 3 or 4 years. One of the reasons for carrying it is to always have it as an example of what a comprehensive addressing of our transportation needs to contain. But it's also been very advantageous because I have from last year the 5-year revenue estimate, so I'm able in this very short session to be able to come up with good numbers, because right now, again, 20% through the session, 9 days into the session, I still don't have the updated impact statement for future out years. But back to the point, what a comprehensive bill needs to contain, again, as I indicated, is the $1 billion for construction. Both my bill, Senator Watkins' bill, a couple other bills in the House, all focus on 5% increase in the wholesale tax on gasoline, and that would fill that gap. And because it's a wholesale percentage tax, it has the growth of inflation that's so important. My bill returns that to the localities where it is raised, to the highway districts where it's raised, for maintenance, so that everyone throughout the state feels comfortable that their maintenance needs will be met. Again, it's new money is $500 million. They need more than the base money. The reason I point that out gets then to the politics, the crucial political question we have before us. Dave is absolutely right. The governor deserves strong credit for getting it onto the front burner. But a partial fix will be worse than doing nothing. And I say that because if you address just the maintenance needs of the state, you will not have a majority vote in any future year to address the construction needs that are so critical to the urban crescent and to our business standing.
And besides putting an additional burden on the sales tax, as the governor's proposal would do, that has the potential for taking money away from other core services, does it not?
That's correct. If we do, we're still, here we are starting to divert general fund money to transportation when we're still at 2007 spending levels for education. We have not recovered from the recession in terms of our education spending. And, the Northern Virginia economy is critical to the state. And if our economy begins to falter because of transportation issues, our composite index score comes down, and the state has to start paying, by formula, more of our education, which means that rural and less prosperous areas of the state will start having to pay more. It's a question of if the top comes down, the bottom has to come up. That's the way these formulas work. And it's a real concern, and I'm hoping that the rest of the state and the delegates and senators who represent more rural areas of Virginia will come to understand that transportation, even though a lot of it is going to be going to solving transportation problems in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads and Richmond, is in their best interest.
Let's go ahead.
Well, I was going to also, and we're hearing this, the rest of the state is realizing that if we did away with the gas tax and substituted a sales tax, that all of the purchases in Kmart's and Walmart's throughout the Commonwealth would have almost an additional penny of tax on it, while people who are driving through the state on their way to spend the winter in Florida aren't paying any part of the freight. And so that the real concern then becomes, wait, why should I, in the rural area, be funding what is mostly an urban traffic flow, 30% of which is non-residents? So this whole trade-off of who bears the burden on what should be a service fee approach is a major concern of all economic levels throughout the state. So basically, with the Wall Street Journal and Grover Norquist saying a tax is a tax is a tax, we should do it right.
Let's turn for a moment to schools, school safety, and the whole issue around gun violence. We've had a more recent tragedy, but of course the Commonwealth has suffered. The Virginia Tech shootings a number of years ago raised the issue, but every time the issue gets raised, it seems like it falters after the news media coverage goes away. What's going on in terms of gun violence in the General Assembly?
Well, all those bills are going to be heard in the Senate tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and I don't know that they're going to fare well. I've taken a completely unique approach, I think, to reducing gun violence in Virginia, and that is this. I have a bill that says if you can prove through clear and convincing evidence, which is the highest standard in civil law, that someone has not taken reasonable efforts to secure their weapons from theft or misappropriation, then they can be held liable if they're used in a crime. And what this does is it's the only thing I can think of to deal with the 300 million guns that are already out there and get Virginians to start thinking about, am I really a responsible gun owner? Have I really done everything I can to secure that weapon from somebody taking it and using it in a crime? This could bring down the number of accidental shootings, the number of suicides, the number of misappropriations by family members of these weapons and used in crimes. Is it going to stop school shootings? No. But it's the only thing that you can do to start dealing with the guns that are already out there. What the president is talking about, what a number of other Virginia legislators are attempting to do, which I approve of, but closing the gun show loophole, putting in a semi-automatic weapons ban, those are good things going forward. But what are we doing about the problem we have with the existing guns? And that's what my bill does.
Well, that's interesting because it requires that along with the constitutional right for an individual to bear arms, there's some responsibility there as well.
You bet. And that's what this is about. This is about individual responsibility and accountability, and that's something that all Virginians should be able to agree on, that we need to do a better job in that area.
Delegate Watts.
And your bill also will address a major issue of gun running, that now that we did away with the 1 gun a month, that allows multiple purchases, and since there is no requirement that you report a stolen weapon, then the person who has bought guns to just sell on the market out there can claim when it's used in a crime, well, it was stolen. And so requiring that you report stolen weapons helps break into that ruse that gun runners are using on multiple weapons. But Woody, I also have to underscore, when we talk about the concerns about not taking $300 million from the general fund, mental health needs are so serious. We have to have the funding for mental health services, no matter what we change in the law as far as accountability and trying to identify needs as early as possible. If we don't have follow-up, if we don't have services available, if we don't have people who can work with those individuals and stay in contact with them to see how they are reacting this month compared to last month, more tragedies will occur. We can cut some of this just inexcusable, incomprehensible human suffering. But mental health services are a critical part of it, and they're really underfunded in Virginia.
There's another bill that perennially comes up, which attempts to put into law what's called the Castle Doctrine, which would relieve a homeowner of responsibility if someone enters their home in an attempt to perpetrate some criminal act. How does that wash in terms of what you're trying to do?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily related. Certainly, what it does is create a standard for self-defense that is much lower. You don't have to retreat. You can, aggressively deal with anybody you perceive as a threat to your home. I know somebody on one occasion, someone showed up at the wrong door in a Halloween costume,
right.
And I think it was in Louisiana somewhere, and they shot him right at the front door, and claimed self-defense. Trayvon Martin, the case in what's called the Stand Your Ground law. When he got into a scuffle with Trayvon Martin, I forget his name right now. Anyway, he shot him. But who was standing his ground? Was it Trayvon Martin, or was it the guy with the gun? When the guy with the gun's coming, coming towards you, and you defend yourself, and then the person takes the gun out and shoots you, who is standing around? It's a very, very complicated issue. I certainly want people to be safe in their homes, but I also don't want it to be a license for irresponsible behavior.
And I want to assure the viewers that under Virginia's law, we are a strong common law state. Under common law, if someone comes into your home and you are in fear of serious bodily injury to you or any member in your home, you have the right to defend yourself. But it is proportional to the degree of fear and threat. It's not step over the threshold. So you're going to have to prove, and it's very easy to prove in the serious cases where people need to defend against some sort of breaking and entry.
And of course, there are a host of budget issues facing the state. Since the Affordable Care Act was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, Medicaid expansion has become a much bigger issue. Where do you think that issue is, Delegate Watts?
Well, on that one, it's a very interesting, Chinese checkers. As far as, fortunately, Secretary Hazel has done a very good job in working with health providers and insurance coverage over the last several years to try to look at what would be a good system for Virginia. So even though Virginia has chosen not to participate in and set up our own health care exchange, that doesn't close the door to the future when we can do it. And as far as Medicaid expansion, we have very strong support for Medicaid expansion because in many ways it will take off the burden of costs that are being borne by the hospital emergency rooms that then are paid for by everyone who's using hospital care of people coming who have no insurance at all, and covering a wider number of people under Medicaid will be to the benefit of all.
And of course, the federal dollars collected from the residents of the Commonwealth, if they are not used here for expansion, they certainly will be used somewhere else.
They certainly will. And the case for expansion is that, for the first several years, the federal government will pay 100%. During that period of time, there'll be additional people with insurance, the ability to pay. It will create thousands of healthcare jobs. And then when Virginia does have to take over several years from now, paying 10% of the cost, we will have the tax infrastructure in place from these new jobs to cover that cost, and we'll have dealt with the crushing problem of dealing with health care for people who can't afford insurance. And it could be a win all the way around. Although when you put your national hat on, if you will, we have to make sure that the federal government is able to afford this Medicaid expansion, that we do the amount of cutting we need to do to the federal budget, the amount of increases to revenue that we need in the federal budget, that we get a balanced approach to solving our revenue problems, and we can create the jobs and make the economy stronger and bring Virginia and the United States back.
Now, you both have a lot of federal employees in your respective districts. Are you hearing from them about the issue of sequestration and the potential impact on job loss in the economy in the
greater
Commonwealth?
Concern that I am hearing is not only do we have federal employees, we have a significant number of federal contractors, and sequestration is going to affect all of those federal contract dollars as well, particularly as there's been increased privatization. So the real concern there is, again, to the state budget. If you start the cutback of many of these, particularly IT, information technology firms, and you start cutting back the flow of dollars, and Virginia, I believe, is fourth in the nation in the amount that we receive, and so it's not just military, but it's also this, there will be a significant impact on Virginia's revenues and our budget.
Same for you? You're hearing the same kinds of concerns, Senator?
Actually, I think it's been a little quieter than you would think. I think everyone's whistling past the graveyard, hoping not to bring up the subject. And we do have some temporary fixes in place. I think people are just right now kind of holding their breath, waiting to see what happens with the debt ceiling, waiting to see what happens with how we're going to deal with deficit reduction at the federal level, and I think people don't feel that they have a whole lot of control over that. There's so little confidence in the United States Congress right now that people don't even feel, I think, that they can interface with it in a meaningful way.
I'm going to have to wrap up right now. Thanks for being here, Senator Dave Marsden and Delegate Vivian Watts.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.